Hello, in this video I'll show you how I created these cupcake toppers. They are perfect for Father's Day or Dad's birthday. I used some water, I have a dry clean paintbrush and a fine tip paintbrush, some silver luster dust and black gel food colouring, some icing sugar and a bow mould. If you don't have one of these bow moulds available, we will be able to make a handmade bow a little later. I use pale blue, navy, dark grey and white for my fondant colours, and an alphabet letter cutter, some tools, a sharp knife, a rolling pin and some different sized circle cutters. First I'm going to prepare the bow mould, and I'm going to do that by just lining it with a little bit of icing sugar, pop some of that fondant in there, and then with that sharp knife I'm going to remove the excess, and I'm just going to place these in the freezer for an hour just to firm up. For my first cupcake I'm going to roll out some of that blue fondant. The size of my circle cutter is the same size as my cupcake case. And in that pale blue fondant I'm going to make 4 circles because I'll be making a box of 12. Then once I've popped them to the side, I'm going to take that dark blue fondant and using a smaller circle cutter just make 2 circles. Then with that sharp knife I'm just going to remove a third from the top, and then with an even smaller circle cutter I'm just going to nip away 2 sides, and this is just to create the effect of an item of underwear. And as you can see, I use the offcuts from one of the toppers against the other topper, and this will just help me be able to keep them at a similar size. Then with the white fondant I rolled a really thin strip and placed that as a waistband on the underwear, and then finished the effect with an upside down Y, again just using that white fondant. I've attached it with a little bit of water and removed any excess with that sharp knife. And once I was happy with them, I just flipped it over, put a little bit of water on the back and attached it to that pale blue fondant topper. These next cupcake toppers are fairly simple. I've just rolled out some of the dark blue fondant really thin, and just using my letter cutters I'm going to cut out a message for Dad. For these ones I decided to just write Top Dad, but you can put on any message. Removing the letters from the cutters isn't always easy, so I ended up using a cocktail stick, which just helped me with the removing of them trickier letters. Then to attach them letters to the topper I just used a little bit of water, using that sharp knife to pick up the letters, pop them in place, and using a tool just to manipulate the positioning until I was happy. And I've used the pale blue background for these toppers. For the next cupcake toppers I'm going to take some white fondant, roll it out and cut out 4 circles, and then I'm going to take some of the grey fondant and roll out a little piece of that. I'm going to slightly dampen that grey fondant. Then with a small circle cutter I'm going to cut through the white fondant, place it on top of the grey and cut through the grey. Then taking some more grey fondant I'm going to attach both them circles I've just made, and using that sharp knife, as you can see, I'm just cutting out a square freehand around each face. The next bit didn't record, but as you can see the only difference is I use my black edible food gel just to draw on a watch face, and then taking a piece of the grey fondant I made a little ball and attached that to the side. Hopefully you'll be able to spend a little bit more time on your watch face and make it a little bit neater than mine. To make the strap for the watch I rolled out that grey fondant again, cut out 2 circles. This just helped me guide the size, and then using the sharp knife I cut 2 thick strips, attached them to that white fondant with a little bit of water. Then using the back of the sharp knife I just made some indentations. Using a little bit of water again, I then attached that watch face to the strap. I decided to leave the watches as they are and not paint them with the silver luster dust. For these next cupcake toppers, I'm going to take some more of the white fondant, but roll it a little bit thicker this time, and cutting away 2 strips, and these are going to be what I'll hopefully make as the collar. And as you can see, I cut away at both edges just to make each side point inwards. To make the tie for these toppers, I started by rolling some of that grey fondant nice and thin. With the sharp knife, cutting a V at one side, and then tapering in on the other side, but leaving that side nice and long. And this should give you a little tie resemblance. Then I'm going to attach that to the centre of a white topper using a little bit of water and just run that through the centre and remove any excess. To create the knot illusion on the tie, I'm taking a little piece of grey fondant, rolling it into a sausage and flattening that into place. To attach the collar, I'm also going to put a little bit of water on the bottom side and just rest that onto the cupcake topper, making it stand up, and I have the longer edge on the bottom of the topper and the smaller edge to the top. And last but not least, for these toppers, I'm going to roll out some more grey fondant nice and thin. I'm going to cut away 4 thin strips, and using a little bit of water to attach them to the toppers, I'm going to place them at either side of the collar and tie to create the illusion of braces. For the next cupcake toppers, I'm going to take that pale blue fondant again and roll out 2 circles, and then roll this excess piece even thinner, and I'm going to cut away 2 rectangles, and on one edge I'm just going to cut it into a little point. These toppers will also have a collar. I'm going to do that in the dark grey fondant by cutting away 2 strips again and tapering each edge in. Then rolling a really thin piece of that grey fondant, I'm just going to attach it to the top and the flat edge of these little shapes we've made. These will be the shirt pockets. For some extra detail, I rolled out a thin piece of grey fondant and cut that into a little strip. After attaching the collar, I then attached this down the centre of the cupcake topper and just cutting it into a little point at the top so I can tuck it into the collar. Next, I added on them little pockets, and using that white fondant created 3 little balls and attached them down the centre. For the next cupcake topper, I'm going to start with cutting out 2 white circles for the base, and then rolling out that pale blue fondant and in the exact same size cutting out another 2 circles. Then with the smaller circle cutter, I'm going to cut away a neck, and then a larger cutter, I'm going to take away 2 sides. And as you can see, I used one side to measure the other side so they would all be the same size. Once I was happy with them, I took that sharp knife and made an indentation down the centre of each one. Then removed the smallest amount of fondant from the bottom of each one, just cutting away a little triangle shape. Then neatening off the edges and attaching them to the white cupcake topper. Next, I removed the bow from the bow mould. If you don't have a bow mould, you can make yourself a bow just by taking 2 balls of the blue fondant and tapering them into a triangle shape. Place both triangles together with the points meeting and cover that meat with a tiny ball of fondant. I made 3 little buttons down the front of each one just by adding 3 little balls of blue fondant. Thank you very much for watching.